Hello, hello, everybody. Let me invite you up here to speak, Birdie. I had a little bit of technical difficulties. I had to cancel the other space because it was scheduled and it would not let me start early. Annoying. But, it's like I thought I could just go there, and normally, if you're there a few minutes early, it'll say you can just start now early. And so I went to try to do that, and it would not allow me to start the space early, at least not an hour early than the original scheduled time. So I just started a new one here, and let me post UFO Twitter Week down in the pill here, and then we'll kind of let the room propagate for a second. How are you doing, Birdie?
I am doing awesome. Can you hear me okay?
I'm sorry, I'm typing right now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Woo!
actually, you sound great. Just, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Birdie.
Hi.
Now,
I'm
it's so
ex-
funny because my co-host here, Jay Just, she was when I first started talking about you a long time ago, just when I started going to your local events, she was the person who was like, "Oh, this is this the lady that used to be Prudence?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" And like she knew about your previous remote viewing history, and I didn't know anything. So I was like, well, you got to come and help me out with this space because you are the remote viewing pro and know a little bit more about that side of you. I am, a rookie to remote viewing. I've never tried it. I've spoken in spaces before about how the closest thing to remote viewing I've had is, sort of psychic trauma situations when like my sister was killed, and so I've always been afraid of it. Like I any kind of like weird psychic sort of connection, uh that kind of thing kind of freaks me out. So I've always kind of stayed away from it, and so to be able to talk about it today and have you guys be able to talk amongst yourselves and really, sort of bring it up a little bit more um, from a point of understanding. Because for me, I'm going to be learning. I mean, Astral, who put on UFO Twitter Week, does a weekly Thursday night remote viewing space, which are very popular, and he's done over 100 of them a weekly now. And I think that this Thursday he's got that gentleman Daz Smith, who's another remote viewer, and they're having like a $500 prize now. We did have a little bit of a snafu when it came to the scheduling of the UFO Twitter Spaces this week, because when I sent him my original times, I had put everything as Pacific time and then he put it as Eastern time. And so then when I realized the mistake, all of a sudden we kind of butted up against some other spaces. And so, as is with live shows, sometimes, we're bumping up against other events, other things. And so that's kind of happening today. So being able to move it a little earlier today, thanks to your schedule and everyone else being able to come and show up. I really appreciate that, because it was important to be able to move it so we weren't competing with every other space on UFO Twitter Week.
Oh, sorry about that. A phone call came in and I lost connection, so I forgot to
Oh,
put my phone on do not disturb. Sorry about that, gang.
you know what? I'm also unfortunately waiting for a call. My roommate left her clicker, and we have a gated community here. So at some point, I'll probably be talking, and all of a sudden, you'll hear me just cut out for a second while I open the gate, and then I'll come back, and I'll have to put it on do not disturb. But well,
Okay.
it looks like we're getting a room here, and I do want to introduce. We have Ursula here as one of my co-hosts, and Jay Justs, and kind of the way we're going to do this space is we're going to talk about a couple different things here with our guest. We're going to talk about her background and her remote viewing, and she does classes and puts on a YouTube channel and events for remote viewing, and she has a very specific kind of remote viewing, so she'll be able to explain that to us and her modalities. And then we will also talk about ABQ UFOs, which is her group here in Albuquerque. This is how I met her. She puts on incredible local events here at coffee shops and libraries and does CE5 events and other types of things locally. And so we'll hear about that. And then, of course, she's involved with the New Paradigm Institute and Danny Sheehan's Global Disclosure Day coming up on October 20th. So we're going to cover some topics, and so we'll kind of go through all those things first, and then anyone can request to come up, and then you guys can just have at her and ask her any question about any of those topics or anything, and you will all be welcome to come up and speak, and we'll stay as long as Birdie has. I know she's got a very, very important and busy schedule, and so she was able to squeeze this in today here for UFO Twitter Week. So I am your host, John Strader. This is the UFO Hotspot, coming to you live from the heart of Albuquerque, New Mexico, here in the heart of the Southwest. And just to give you a little heads up on Birdie, let me tell you about her. She's a beekeeper, which I find amazing, and a digital forensic expert. She's a writer, a community organizer, and of course, a remote viewer. And she holds a master's degree in digital forensics with a concentration in writing, and is currently pursuing an advanced degree in artificial intelligence. Very smart woman. She has tackled some interesting projects in the past, starting from an arts and culture and community newspaper in northern New Mexico, and creating and editing very much the Dogecoin magazine. She's a founder and director of ABQ UFOs, a non-profit organization dedicated to understanding, studying, and disclosing of the UFO phenomena. She believes that community involvement is crucial in the field of ufology, as we do here in Spaces, and through her leadership, ABQ UFOs aims to foster a collaborative environment where enthusiasts and researchers can come together to explore the mysteries of the universe and hang out, share stories, have coffee, and just meet each other here in real life instead of in the digital X spaces like we are today. And early in her career, Birdie, as Prudence Calabrese, served as the vice president of the Farsight Institute before founding her own remote viewing enterprise, Transdimensional Systems. She has educated thousands globally in the art of remote viewing and has dedicated over 2 decades to independent research and exploration in this topic. She's returned to the public sphere to share and teach her innovative method known as transdimensional mapping, marking a new chapter in her extensive career. And she is with us here right now in this wonderful UFO Twitter Week space. Thank you so much for coming and seeing us, Birdie.
Hey, thanks, John. It's really great to connect with you on Spaces here. And it was wonderful having you at our Cafe Close Encounters on Saturday.
Well, let's tell them a little bit about, let's start with that. Let's start about how we met, kind of, and just what you do here locally, and how that's sort of spun into you getting onto Twitter here and finding out about Spaces.
Yeah, I started a UFO group just over a year ago. And the reason I started it was because I wanted to make some friends who were interested in all of the amazing, incredible, strange things out there, UFOs, the paranormal, remote viewing. So I started a group first on Meetup, and it just snowballed, and it's turned into this huge organization. We fill the library, community rooms, we fill the coffee shop. We have several events each month. We have guest speakers. We have a monthly social gathering, which was just this past Saturday. We also do interviews over YouTube with various folks involved in consciousness studies or practice and ufology. And we just have a great time. And it's because of the UFO group that I was outed as a remote viewer, because I decided to teach my local group a little bit of remote viewing, and they all knew about me from the very beginning. Our very first meetup, which had about 10 people, I just told them right then my whole background and my old name and everything, and I was very transparent about it. And once I did an online workshop for my group at large, it kind of got some traction out there, and people were like, "Oh my God, she's back!" So I am back and having a great time. But ABQ UFOs is my group, and it's a lot of fun. it's wonderful to actually meet people in real life and to have face-to-face conversations. There's something different about it. Now, this is fun too, talking on Spaces or chatting with people over the internet on Facebook or Instagram and whatever. And there's value there too, but there's something super special about meeting people face to face and having genuine conversations. You can read people's body language. They oftentimes feel more willing to share some of their own UFO encounters or experiences or things that they've heard that maybe they wouldn't be comfortable sharing online. As well, there are quite a number of people that don't go online to these on any kind of social media. They don't like it for a variety of reasons, and so it's wonderful to just sit back, get a cup of coffee, and have a cool conversation. And John's been a member of the group, and he comes to our events. And it's wonderful to have gotten to know him in person. He is even cooler in person, ladies and gentlemen, than he
Oh,
is.
stop. Oh, stop.
It's true. It's true. He's amazing. He's amazing. We have actually a number of folks who are super active on X/Twitter in the group that you may have heard of, and it's just been wonderful to see the group grow and to move into these different directions. Our group is now aligned with the New Paradigm Institute's Citizens for Disclosure initiative, which is a grassroots effort where we're getting folks involved with the disclosure movement by having them write to their congresspersons, their senators, and requesting that they get involved and learn more about the UFO phenomenon and to support the UAP disclosure amendment, which of course is not in play at the moment, but Citizens for Disclosure is still going strong, and we're going to be holding Global Disclosure Day on October 20th, which is going to be amazing. John is going to be the official X Space host for Global Disclosure Day. It'll also be live streamed over YouTube. We also have a live Zoom going. If you have a watch party, you can sign up and get the Zoom link. And there are some amazing speakers. We've got, of course, Danny Sheehan, who is the head of New Paradigm Institute. We have Lou Elizondo. We have Carl Nell, just announced, Steve Bassett, and a number of other fascinating researchers that are involved in the phenomenon in a variety of ways. And I'll be giving a short little talk too about the importance of community in the UFO space and why it's important that we all gather together in all these different kinds of ways and let our voices be heard.
Now, let me ask you a question about this live stream event. Now, is it going to be interactive where the guests are talking to each other, or is each person going to kind of just make their own statement and it'll be sort of like that? Everyone will come in, do their live statement about whatever their position is on this topic, and then it'll just kind of go on, or will it be like a discussion?
It'll be each individual person's going to come on by themselves and talk about whatever their subject is. New Paradigm Institute is, we're all submitting what we want to talk about, and we're going to have our, however long. I'm sure that the big names are getting longer than people like me. But
Well, the cool
everyone's,
thing that I really appreciated you reaching out to me about this event, and you had Danny Sheehan in town with you last weekend. Do you want to spill little beans about what you were running around doing with Danny in town?
oh, he was here just to he was going through town, so he hung out with me for the weekend, and we talked about Citizens for Disclosure and all of the ways to help foster community. They're trying Citizens for Disclosure. We're trying to get active groups in every single state in the United States and in other parts of the world, and we have already groups now in 43 states and in a number of other countries. And we're all working together to push for disclosure. And so we just talked about all the kinds of ways that we could foster community. And we also worked on Global Disclosure Day and how this could all actually work, be put together. It's a big undertaking to make sure it goes off without a hitch and everyone's connected. And we have all of our watch parties, a lot of technical stuff involved. So It's going to be amazing. It was fun seeing Danny in person. He's a wonderful, wonderful man, very gentle person.
So nice. And, I'm really excited to be part of it. And one of the things that I'll let our audience know, what's going to be cool about doing the X stream is that, yes, I'm sure a lot of people want to watch it on YouTube because you'll get to see everybody's faces and have them talking and whatever. But we will stream it live, and then we will stay open and be a place for hopefully some of the guests who were on the disclosure event to come in and actually interact with each other and with us. I spoke with Katie from New Paradigm today, and so hopefully we're going to work on that a little bit more this week. So I'm hoping we can get some of these bigger guests maybe to hop into the after space. But everyone, of course, on X will be invited to come in, and once they watch the live stream, or even if they watch it a little bit delayed, to be able to come in and discuss what we saw, who was there, what all was happening, and just kind of what the event means. And the fact that it's coming up on the big election, and so many politicians are running for election, and this is really feels like the first time in our lifetime that this topic is truly like an election issue. I mean, you had Lou Elizondo going on Trump Jr.'s thing last night. You've got Trump talking about it. I mean, I wish Kamala Harris would step up and speak about it. Sure seems like the Dems are pretty mum's the word, but it looks like at least the GOP is taking it serious enough to know there's votes to be mined here in the UFO community, and that it's a bipartisan issue. So I'm really happy that we're doing this event.
I'm happy about it too, and I'll definitely be at the X Space after party to chime in. And I know some of these speakers are definitely going to be doing it. We've been talking about it behind the scenes, and we're going to encourage everybody to get on and to have an open discussion afterward.
It's going to be exciting. So, okay, so
It
now
is.
I had never heard of you and your remote viewing history, and why you had disappeared and come back, and any of all of this stuff. So, can you just kind of give us here in the space, your history in remote viewing, how you got involved in this topic, how you got excited about UFOs, and how this all sort of organically grew?
Yeah, I learned about remote viewing at the same time the rest of the world learned about it when it was declassified um, in 1995 when the Stargate program was declassified. And Stargate was a program where soldiers were trained to become psychic spies. And they worked with natural psychics to develop a protocol that keeps essentially your left brain, your controlling, wanting to make decisions, wanting to know what's happening, that part of your brain busy, while your right brain, your more intuitive side, the information can come through. And what they said when it was declassified was that it worked, but it didn't work well enough to be something that they wanted to keep staying involved in. Now, whether that's true or not, I have my opinions about that. I think that my guess is that they continued working on remote viewing, but the soldiers they had been training, these military men and women, they had reached essentially retirement age. And so they were going to be let loose out in the population. And some of them started making the interview rounds. And I saw Ed Dames, Major Ed Dames. He was one of these military guys. And he was on a news show. And I was watching the news. I was pregnant with my youngest child. I do have 5 children, and they're all grown. And he started telling the interviewer that anyone could learn this, anybody. And I thought, gee, I want to learn this. I desperately want to learn this. And it just happened that I was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. And a scientist, a professor at Emory University, a sociology professor, Dr. Courtney Brown, had just been trained by Major Ed Dames to learn these protocols, to learn remote viewing. And he was starting an institute, an educational institute, to train others how to do this. And Courtney had written a book called Cosmic Voyage that had just come out around the same time as this big announcement about Stargate. And it quickly shot up the New York Times bestseller list, and it detailed all of these incredible adventures that he had, remote viewing, all kinds of strange, paranormal alien things. He claimed there were aliens living under Mount Baldy in Santa Fe. And he had all of these amazing stories. And I thought, gee, I want to learn that so bad. So I called him up. And he was just starting the Institute, hadn't started training anyone yet. And he was setting up his first classes, and his classes were very expensive. They lasted a week and they cost over $3,000. And I didn't have $3,000. I was pretty poor. And so I bargained. Though I was poor and pregnant, I was also a computer geek, and I had learned HTML, which is what you use to code websites at the time. And so I bargained. I said, okay, you need a website and I need to learn this. And so we struck a deal. So I created the Farsight's first website and took training, one of the very first classes at Farsight, learned to become a remote viewer. Ended up, I had some natural ability. I believe 100% just from training so many people that literally everyone can learn it. But there are people that have a natural ability. It's like playing a musical instrument. Everybody can learn to play, glowworm on the saxophone, but not everyone's going to make it to Carnegie Hall, right? And I was good at it. And so I rose up the ranks at Farsight, became the vice president, was there for a couple of years, 2-3 years. And then I left to start my own business, which I titled Transdimensional Systems. And I also trained people. But by that time, I decided that there were some things I wanted to change about the protocols. They did come out of the military, and I felt that the language was quite militaristic and patriarchal. And I wanted to change kind of how I felt about it and how I thought about it. So I started changing things a little bit and started training people in my new system, which was essentially the same as the military method with some some little differences here and there. And I trained lots of people all over the world. I went to Japan, I went to Australia, I went to the UK several times, taught all over the United States. And I started developing an operational group, and we started doing real life work with remote viewing. The folks who had been continued to practice were getting better and better at it. We started working on some police cases, other law enforcement cases. We started doing some corporate work. We even hired by a hedge fund to help them manage their portfolio and to do all kinds of strange things for them. We worked on so many crazy cases. It was an absolute blast. I loved it so much, and I made a lot of really great friends. But
Are you allowed
one
to talk about any, like you said, a police case? Is there any like particular case that you worked on that you guys really helped out that you can talk about? That would be
Well, the thing about it is every time we would do work for police at that time, it wasn't official. It was always a detective who had heard about remote viewing or saw something about me in the news. They'd call and they'd say, "Hey, listen, we're stuck on this case and we need some help, but this isn't through official channels because nobody quite believed in it at that time. It was still so new out there. There's the giggle factor, the woo factor. And so, the law enforcement work that we did was official but unofficial. And so we worked on a couple of missing persons cases, and we were instrumental in those. In one case, we literally helped lead them to a body in the Anza Borrego Desert. It was pretty remarkable. And I just had so much fun. I mean, police work is rewarding, but it's difficult. You're remote viewing all of these mostly terrible things that have happened to people. And we were doing it with the hope that we could give some closure and comfort to anyone, to parents or spouses or siblings or whoever, survivors were of whatever terrible event. We didn't do only murders. There were a few cases that we worked on that involved stolen items. We worked on one drug house case, which was a little creepy, but it was, I don't know, it was
Wow,
fun.
that's fascinating. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
distract you from your main story, but
No,
I was like,
no.
how would you
It's
work with the
no, you're
police? That's so
great.
cool.
Yeah. It was really fun, and we'd write a report, pass our information in, and sometimes I'd work closely with the detective. Um, I worked very closely with my second in command, John Vivanco, who is been in the public field all this time. He continued after I left and continued teaching uh, what's been come to be called TDRV, after transdimensional remote viewing. It wasn't, we didn't call it that back then, but that's what people are calling it now. And I think he's made some modifications. He's an amazing, amazing person. And he and I had so many crazy adventures doing all of this stuff. We'd be hiking through the desert looking for clues. We went on so many crazy adventures. It was so much fun. He was truly just a marvelous, marvelous person. And then one thing that happened when I was at TDS was that, I was making waves, and I was young, and I was more brash than I am today. I'm older and wiser, perhaps. I'm a grandmother now, and I've softened around the edges somewhat, but I was a little brash and a little more in your face about things. And I did, you know, I think I pushed some buttons because I talked about how I didn't like the military method, particularly for a number of reasons. And I started getting a lot of pushback, and a lot of negative things were said about me in some other remote viewing circles. And then I started getting harassment that I didn't feel was tied to other remote viewers. It was something else. And it didn't happen just to me, it happened to others in the group. John Vivanco, for one, other of our central group, where we started getting followed by these unmarked vans that they had, their windows were completely blacked out. I lived on a cul-de-sac at the time in Southern California, and there were literally like 5 or 6 of these parked in front of my home for weeks on end, weeks on end. And you'd go up, knock on the window, nobody would ever roll it down, nobody would ever acknowledge me. I started getting phone calls with I'm sorry, I get emotional about this. Phone calls with just threats, death threats, um, rape threats, threats against
Holy
my
God.
threats against my children, who were young then. They're all grown now, but it was really awful, and I didn't quite know what to do about it. Um, we talked about it internally, and it was getting just untenable. And I decided I didn't want to live like that anymore. I didn't want to be afraid. And so I decided just to shut everything down. And I also felt that there were a lot of strange things going on in the remote viewing field. And I had just noticed a lot of strange things. And so I decided just to shut everything down and to just become invisible. And I essentially did. I didn't go off the grid or do anything that drastic. I just shut everything down and started doing other things, and eventually started using my childhood nickname, which has always been Birdie. My mom always called me that since I was a baby. Started going by Birdie, and just did a whole bunch of other things. I wrote an essay about it. It's on my website, norivets.com, norivets.com. An essay called 20 Years of Silence, Life is Transdimensional Mapping, where I kind of outline all the crazy stuff I did in the interim. But I never stopped remote viewing. I have done it almost every day. There were 6 months when the only time I didn't do it were 6 months when my mom was dying and I was her caregiver, and she had brain cancer. So I just didn't remote view then at all. I just didn't have the mental space for it or the time. But normally I view twice a day, early in the morning around 4 a.m., 4 a.m., and then later in the day. And I kept doing that, even though I was doing all these other things. And I kept thinking about it and thinking about it and just wondering about it, because it seemed to me that I knew it worked, but you know, it's in how people talk about it. They talk about having a target, and a target implies hitting or missing something, right? And so, you know, when you see people's work, people share their work online, remote viewers share their work, and they'll say, this was a hit. Or they'll say, well, this was a miss. Or this was kind of a hit. See, I hit it here, or I got this right, but this was all wrong. And people talk about things like, if you're a remote viewer, you might use the language AOL, analytic overlay, which means that your mind's decided what something is, and so you want to discard that. At Farsight, they would call that a deduction. And so you try to get that out of your head by writing it off on the side of your paper. And I just really started wondering about all this, and wondering if all of that was correct, or if there was something else going on. And I decided over 20, it took me a long time, over some years, that there was something else going on. And this kind of led to what I'm doing today, which is a little bit different. It's not hugely different, but it's kind of a new approach and a new way of looking at remote viewing. I call it transdimensional mapping. The transdimensional, I'm only using that as a throwback to who I was 25 years ago, but mapping is
Can
what
you
I call
explain
it.
it? Can you explain it to
Yeah,
us
I
without,
sure
going?
can. I
Okay.
sure can.
I've heard
So
enough. Thanks.
you're welcome.
Okay, I don't know who that woman was. She had popped up here, had her hand up. I don't think she knows how to be patient, so we dropped her down. But go ahead and keep going.
Yeah, no worries. I'm not for everyone. This isn't for everyone. There's all different kinds of schools of thought, and I think people in remote viewing should find the methods, the protocols, the people that they resonate with, and work with them, and do that kind of remote viewing. And I think people that are interested in what I'm doing are gravitating to what I'm doing, and I'm really happy to be teaching and sharing it online. But what mapping is what I decided was that when you remote view, I don't think that your mind makes anything up. I think that every single piece of data that you receive in a remote viewing session is real in some way. It may not be literal or direct, but it is likely a comparison or a metaphor or an analogy or a parable or a word painting. Your mind is screaming at you. Your subconscious mind is trying to make a comparison, because much of the time when you look at something, your so-called target, it's oftentimes something you've never experienced before, something you've never seen before. It may be from a different culture or a different time, outside of your experience. And we all come to this with this big, heavy background of our own personal beliefs, philosophies, spirituality or religion, our education, our upbringing, our cultural conditioning. So we have all this baggage we carry around with us. It's not bad baggage. It's what makes us who we are. And I think that all of that flavors your session. And so what mapping does is it allows you to deconstruct all that in the middle of a remote viewing session. So if you think that it's Disneyland, instead of writing it off to the side and trying to get it out of your head, you work with it and you try to deconstruct it by making connections to other pieces of data that you get. So if you get, say you think that there's people there, and then you think that it's Disneyland, well, then you make a connection between the people in Disneyland, and then just making that connection allows your mind to say, oh, well, it's not really Disneyland, but the people are there and they're having fun, and there's lots of young people, like kids, So what mapping does, it's hard to do this in a non-visual, hard to talk about it in a non-visual way. This is kind of a visual process in a lot of ways, but what mapping does is it allows you to just take everything that you get, literally everything, just dump it all out of your head, and then you play with it. It's very freeing and fun. And the students that I've been working with recently are just having incredible experiences. It takes a little bit longer than a typical remote viewing session, but at the end, you end up with a cohesive narrative. You're able to say something tangible about what it is, instead of saying, well, I think there's a structure there, and I think there's this and that. You're able to write a little story about it. And I don't know. I'm having a lot of fun with it. The people I've been working with are having so much fun with it, and I think that it might be the right method for some people interested in remote viewing. You know, probably not for everybody. I know I'm not for everybody, but I think that, you know, people that are interested in this, you can, the beauty of it too is that you can incorporate it into a regular remote viewing session, whether you practice CRV or SRV or TRV or TDRV, any of the remote viewing protocols, you can add this in. If you're a remote viewer, you might want to add this in place of the matrix or after the matrix. So, you know, replace your stage 4 or do it as a stage 5 kind of a thing. And it's free and fun. I've already done a couple of lectures on it. They're available on YouTube. And I'm doing an ongoing lecture series where I outline this and show lots of examples so that people can see what I'm talking about. And there's a lot more to it, but that's kind of basically it. You get a big, huge piece of paper, tons of colored pencils and crayons and markers, and you go to town. I think the colors are really important and the textures, whether you choose crayon or a thin marker. And it allows you to kind of free up your mind. Instead of thinking about what colors are there, you can instantly just grab a color and like intuitively you'll grab the right color. It's amazing just how that works. You know, people are my students are grabbing, you know, like if it's a blonde woman at the Target, they'll grab a yellow crayon and draw the hair on a person without even thinking. It's another way to let that intuitive side have a little free reign. So that's what I'm doing.
That sounds amazing. Okay, Just, you got your hand. You got some questions. I know you do. Come on.
Well, I don't know if she's finished telling her story, but
Well,
when I was learning RV, I don't know if you have different terminologies, but that would be like if you, let's say, and I actually did do a target that was Disneyland, but let's say I did that target, I would declare an AOL. But I'm guessing you're saying this is towards the end of your session that you do this mapping.
You can actually start with the mapping once you get used to the idea of it. But if you're new to remote viewing or if you're new to mapping, I generally have people kind of do a kind of a ideogram, some probing, some quick sketches, maybe a general sketch, and then move on to the mapping. But I do not differentiate between low-level data and high-level data at all anymore. I allow anything on any page. So even at the very beginning, even if you're getting high-level data, all your nouns and such, have at it, put it down, and you can deconstruct it in the mapping. And I know that that's not at all how the traditional remote viewing methods teach, or suggest that you should even do. But I'm finding that it works with this practice. So, yeah.
Well, okay, so I see we're getting a couple of requests, and I just want to let everyone know we're going to invite everyone up here. I just want to go through a few more things with Birdie, and then we're just going to open it up to the field, and you guys can ask her anything you want. And you did mention that some of these sessions, these training sessions, are on YouTube. Do you want to share your YouTube channel information with us here?
Yeah. I originally was using my UFO group's YouTube channel to post some of these because I started by just doing some Q&As just generally about remote viewing and UFOs, of course, because it was for my UFO group. And so I do, there are several videos on YouTube. The channel is ABQ UFOs. ABQ, of course, is the abbreviation for Albuquerque. But my new YouTube channel, which I'm just shoving all my remote viewing stuff there, is No Rivets, NORIVETS.
No rivets, just like the craft.
Do you
That's
want me to,
exactly.
sorry,
Oh, no, you're good. Go ahead.
do you want me to stick it up in the Jumbotron, the link that you have?
That would
Oh,
be
sure,
great,
that would
Just,
be
if you could
really
do those
nice.
things. That would be
Okay.
awesome. So,
Thank you kindly.
Okay, so you created this new way to remote view, a different way, and it sounds very fun and interesting. But what was the entrance point for you to start getting deeply into UFOs? Was it through the remote viewing and that connection, or did you have other sightings or events or things in your life that brought you to this part of the phenomenon?
Um, well, I had a UFO experience when I was 7 years old, and that was my first UFO. I've had a number of them, but my first encounter, I was 7 years old, and it was over Christmas vacation. I grew up in Massachusetts, and I was with I have four younger sisters, but my closest sister, she's a year younger than me. She was about 6. And we had gotten for Christmas a Lone Ranger and a Tonto doll, because the Lone Ranger was super popular back then in like 1972 or whatever. Um, and we were playing with their dolls. I guess they call them action figures now. And it was lightly snowing, just starting to snow outside. It was about, I don't know what time it was, but it was dusk. The sun was setting. And through the window of our bedroom, which was on the second floor, this strange light came through the window, a beam of light, and it was grayish, bluish, greenish. It had little sparkles in it. It's like a beam. And it illuminated us and our dolls, and we dropped our dolls and just looked out the window to see where this was coming from. And there was this gray, dull, metallic. It was this flying saucer, it was a craft, just like your standard flying saucer, completely smooth. We couldn't see the whole thing, just part of it, because, only could see like the leading edge, and all of a sudden our dolls just rose up in the air in that beam and started spinning around in opposite directions in the beam. And that's literally all we remembered. Couldn't remember anything. The next morning, I got up, I ran up, I woke my sister up, we ran to my mom, mom. And we were trying to explain to her what we saw. Now, I was just a kid. This was the early 70s. I didn't have I never heard of a UFO or spaceships or anything like that. I didn't even have the language to describe any of this. We were just trying to explain what happened. And my mom just said, "Oh, you girls just had a bad dream." And we just kind of side-eyed each other like that was not a dream. And I forgot about it. I forgot about it. And until I was, I don't know, around 10 years old or so, I was at the public library. And there was a book in the kids section about UFOs. It was kind of a UFOs for kids book. It had a big flying saucer on the front. And I was mesmerized. I checked that book out. I read it cover to cover, showed it to my sister. And we were like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I became obsessed with it, and I just read everything I could. And back then there was no internet. There wasn't anything like that. You had to check books out of the library. I had to ask the librarian, "Are there any more books?" And she would try to find other books for me. As I got older, I would start subscribing to different crazy UFO newsletters that you would get in the mail, these mimeographed copies. It was such a different time period, such a different space. You had time to think about things, which we don't have that today. Everything is so fast paced. We live in a soundbite world. The news just bombards us every day. I mean, even UFO stuff on Twitter, wherever, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you are, Insta, it's just constant. It's constant. This person said this person said that. Everyone's reacting to everything on every moment. You don't have time to sit and think. And back then you had time. That's all you had, was time. So I would spend all these weeks between, books that would come in at the library or those crazy newsletters I would order, and I'd think about things. And then when I was 16, I had another experience. And this was at a slumber party, also over Christmas vacation. Weirdly enough, I think that's just a coincidence, but that's when it happened. Slumber party with a bunch of other girls. It was at a friend's house. And we were playing Truth or Dare. And she was one of the rich kids in town. So they had a really beautiful ranch house with a rumpus room and a big patio that opened up to the outdoors. And they had a huge yard with tennis courts and a swimming pool and a big, big forest of pine trees way in the distance. And so we were playing truth or dare, and it was my turn. I was asked the question, didn't want to answer it, didn't want to tell the truth. So I took the dare, and I had to run around the backyard naked in the snow, singing the theme to The Love Boat, which was popular then. So I ran around the backyard naked, singing The Love Boat at the top of my lungs while my friends were laughing and cracking up at me. I was hoping that my friends' parents wouldn't be watching. And then I just stopped because there was this thing that was coming out from behind the pine trees. It was diamond shape and orange. And it gave off this orange light. It like glowed from within. I couldn't tell what it was made out of. I don't know if it was metal or what, because the light was so bright, and it started getting closer to me, and I was just frozen in place. And there were all these pine cones, kind of scattered along on top of this. And the snow was crunchy because it was old. And last thing I remember was thinking I could pick up this pine cone and chuck it at it and it would hit it. And that was the last thing I remember. The next morning, we all get up, we all go to breakfast, and my friend's father's looking at us. He's like, were you guys in mother's makeup? And we looked around at each other, and our faces were all red, like sunburned. And I didn't remember it then. None of us remembered it then. We just didn't know why our faces were red. We hadn't been in any makeup. And it was a year or two later at high school graduation party, when I was one of your typical teenage high school graduation party. Everyone's drinking and carousing there in Western Massachusetts. And my best friend was barfing into a bush, and I was holding her hair back. And there was something about the light in the sky and the bush, and I don't know. It just all came back to me, and just a flood of memory. And I'm like, oh my God, do you remember that sleepover? And my friend just like immediately sobered up, and she's like, the UFO. And there were a couple other girls there, 3 other girls there that had been at that sleepover. We all got together and we talked about it the rest of the night. And I haven't had anything like that since. Those two were the only 2 times that I've seen what I'll say is an up close craft. Now, I've gone to some of the group CE5s and seen some orb-like things or little lights in the sky that who knows what they are. I don't know what that stuff is, but those 2 were really impressionable. But when I became a remote, yeah, isn't that crazy? But that's like classic, right? Those are just
Yeah,
classic
but I mean,
encounter stories.
but with a large group of people, to have a physical effect on your bodies and all of you, to have, it seems like, possibly missing time. Do you
Yeah.
still communicate with these ladies today?
One of them I do. And we're
And
still
did they have
friends to
any
this
other
day.
experiences through their life, or did that get them
No,
more into the topic? Or
no,
because some
in
people, go
weirdly
ahead.
enough, not at all. She is not into it at all. I mean, she thinks it's real, obviously, and she doesn't make fun of it, but she's just not interested. And I've tried talking with her about all the stuff going on, and yeah, you know, it's like everybody has their own interests on this planet. And even though I think this is like the biggest question facing humanity, are we alone? That's the biggest question we have. And I think kind of the most important question humanity has ever had. You know, who are we and what's our place in this universe? But for a lot of people, that's not the biggest question to them. They have other big questions that they wrestle with. And so, yeah, my friend is not into it, weirdly enough. And I at our UFO group, I've talked to lots of people, and they're like, yeah, my sister, she's not into it either, even though she was there when we had this experience. And I think that's pretty common, actually. Or
Absolutely.
maybe it's fear. Maybe you don't want to face that. I don't know. But I tend
I
to
think
think it's
it's
just that it's people are just different.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I've had two major experiences, both where I had the UFOs and Air Force jets chasing them. And both witnesses, one is my ex-wife, one is an old friend from high school. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want anything to do with it. I mean, they just absolutely do not want to be involved, discuss it. It's too big. I used to have a yearly fight with my ex-wife about it because I would try to get her because I couldn't stop. I was obsessed. I mean, completely obsessed my whole life because of the experiences I had had and the many sightings and other, anomalous experiences that I just couldn't understand. And I had to try to figure it out. And when I couldn't understand why she or he didn't feel the same way, like it was always like a bone of contention because I was like, we saw this together. How can I feel this way and you feel completely different? It would drive me crazy. And so you're right. I think that that is very, very common, how people react differently, and then how that puts you on a path, and it put you on a path to seek out, things that were different and abnormal and paranormal. I mean, getting into the remote viewing, getting into these UFO groups. I mean, to be able to follow that path.
Yeah, I've just been obsessed with it my entire freaking life. And then I should explain this other long experience that I had because it's quite different and it's a contactee experience, which is different than an encounter with the craft, and having missing time. This is quite different. And this happened after I had been involved in remote viewing. It actually started when I was working at Farsight and continued um, for a while when I was running my own organization. But I started having these encounters with one. I don't know if it was the same being every time. God knows, but I would see a being in the middle of the night, around 2:30 in the morning, in my bathroom. I know it's ridiculous, and people made fun of me, really mercilessly, and I don't blame them because it's ridiculous. See a alien in your bathroom. This look like your standard little gray alien, short, grayish, grayish, bluish, greenish skin, the big eyes, not quite as big as some depictions, but big, big almond shaped eyes, little slit mouth. And um, it would just stand there, wouldn't really move. And I would just stare at it and it would give me a telepathic message. And I call these messages thought balls. And it was almost every night for, I don't know, a little over 2 years.
How
And
old were you at this time? How old were you?
in my early 30s,
And you were deeply already remote viewing at this
I
point.
was already remote viewing. And so I call them thought balls because it wasn't a linear message. It wasn't a message that I could just say, oh, the alien said this, and I called him the gray dude. And I wrote a book about these experiences and my experiences, and it's kind of it's a weird book. It's called Intentions: The Intergalactic Bathroom Enlightenment Guide, and it's no longer in print. It was only in print for a short while. This was before, kind of the print on demand kind of a thing. And But I made it available for anyone to download as a PDF on my website if anyone is so inclined to read a really weird book. But but the thought balls, they weren't linear. I couldn't like just go up to someone and say, well, the alien said X, Y, and Z. It wasn't like that. It was this strange, complex, convoluted, like a ball of yarn, but all tangled. And I would have to just think about each message for a very long time and try to unravel it and try to describe it because it also wasn't human. It was, well, alien, it was so different from my perception, and a lot of it I just simply couldn't understand and still can't to this day. And I still am trying to unravel to this day all of these thought balls. I think about them every now and then, a particular one. They're like individual thought balls still kind of encapsulated in my mind. I can like revisit any individual one and think about that thread and try to pull on it some more. And I tried to deconstruct it much like I do now with mapping. Back then I was trying to deconstruct these messages, and that's what my book is fundamentally about was kind of what these messages were about. And now today, I mean, it's a long time, 20, 22 years later, whatever, since I wrote that, 25 years later since I wrote that book. And I think about the messages a little differently. I would, and so I kept a journal all this time. And so I'm going to compile like my new thoughts on all those thought balls and probably just put that out there at some point.
And did it
But
just happen during that period of your life, or did these visitations continue?
it happened just during that period. And then I saw him like 7 times after. But the last time was not long after my mom passed away, and that was 8 years ago. And I haven't had any visitations since. And I don't know if they're over. I don't know if he'll pop up again. I just don't know. I don't know. I was not quite terrified of it. I was a little afraid at the beginning, but after a while it became routine and I wasn't afraid. And I don't think I'd be afraid if it happened tonight. Sometimes every now and then I would wake up in the middle of the night and, have to go pee, right? And I'll think, is it going to be in there? Every once in a great while, maybe a couple times a year, I'll think that, and I'll have this sense of anticipation, and then there's nothing there. But
Yeah, I was going to ask you if anything, if any sort of paranormal experiences upticked since you started the UFO group and getting so active again, because it seems like they monitor, and when you start like really interfacing again and start communicating with other people and thinking about it, setting your intentions, that they show back up,
yeah, I haven't had an uptick. I mean, I always have had some like low level paranormal stuff. I mean, and I think mostly it's just awareness more than I think all this stuff is on a continuum. I think it's just all around us all the time. It's just a question of whether your awareness is open, whether that aperture is open and you see what's already there. Sometimes I'll catch stuff, I'll just stare at, I'm sitting here at my desk right now. By the way, my desk used to belong to Lonnie Zamora, the police
No
officer.
way.
Yeah,
Socorro?
honest to
Really? How did
God,
you get
honest to
Lonnie
God.
Zamora's desk?
This is an amazing story. This is absolutely true. Um, when I bought this house, I needed a desk for my home office. And so I went on Craigslist. And I was looking for a couple of weeks on Craigslist and I didn't like anything because like my house is very modest. It's a little house. It's really cute, but it's very modest. But I like weird stuff, and I was looking for a desk that looked unusual. And then finally, I saw this listing, but it was down in Socorro, and one of my sons, happened to be going to school. He was at school down there at New
New Mexico
Mexico
Tech.
Tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, which he graduated from. One of the It's like the top public STEM school in the whole country. Amazing school. But anyway, he was down there. And so I thought, well, I'll just go and visit him and take a look at this desk. And it's a beautiful 1920s half moon secretary's desk with these leather inlays. It's absolutely stunning. And it was cheap, I'm like, it was like a couple $100. And I'm like, I hope I get that before anybody else does, but it's Socorro, so I'll probably be there a while. So on the weekend went down and was talking to the woman who was selling it. And she said her name was Mary Zamora. And I'm thinking, no way, is that his widow? And so I asked her if she were married, and she said she was widowed. And I said, oh, what was your husband's name? And she said, Lonnie. And I about fell over. And I said, the Lonnie Zamora. And she just kind of gave me this look. And I said, oh, yeah. And so, but then she talked about it. But yeah, it was his desk. And I met his
Wow.
partner. And I met his partner who she introduced me to his, one of his police partners. And I had a nice conversation with him too. So yeah, so I've got his desk.
Oh, you're going to have to post a picture of that. You have to post a picture of the Lonnie Zamora desk.
Yeah, I will.
That's nuts.
I'll post it up. I'll post it up after this. Yeah, I'll take a picture. But
People
it's
don't realize how small New Mexico. We're huge for like
I
land mass, but like
yeah.
population, we're a rural, small little state, and it's very easy to realize how you're connected to so many people in this state because it really is, an old boys network in so many ways. I mean, it's amazing that I can't believe that you're on Lonnie Zamora's desk. That is
Yeah,
wild.
yeah. I know. It's crazy. So it was just circumstance, it just happened to be coincidence. Who knows? But anyway, I just love, this is my favorite desk I've ever owned. And it would be even if it wasn't Lonnie Zamora's. It's just so beautiful. But,
Okay, well,
yeah.
let me reset the room real quick because I
Okay.
want to open it up and let people come up and talk to you, and I do want to finish I'm going to talk about the upcoming events. I want to talk about your Alien Explorations conference, but this is a Twitter space, and everyone's probably sick of hearing me talk, and so I want to give other people a chance. But Astral is here, and he is our resident remote viewing expert who hosts he's one of the hosts here of UFO Twitter's week. He's one of the originators, and him and Hollywood, and he puts on the Thursday night UFO or the remote viewing space every single Thursday, and he has a really big space. And I think a target to reveal. So I'm going to let Astral fill us in about what he's got going on for Thursday and the target, and just give it to him. And then if he has any questions to you directly, as a fellow remote viewer, then I'm going to let him do that. And then we're just going to open it up. If anyone, I see Direct is down here, anyone can feel free to come up and ask any questions and give, Miss Jaworski here your time and energy, and we'll just let the space roll.
Hey, what's up, John? And hey, Birdie, how are
Hey,
you?
I'm doing great, Astral. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I don't consider myself a remote viewing expert. I'm probably more of a remote viewing enthusiast, but I do like the testing part of it a lot more than the actual remote viewing. I mean, I love doing remote viewing and that, but I am focused a little bit more on the testing side of it and
Yeah.
developing maybe tests that could, differentiate different protocols and even monetary stuff, and then incorporating AI and all of that. So each week I have an envelope, and I got the idea from Paul Smith, who suggested a very simple way to test remote viewing through social media. And so I'll have somebody else randomly select a photo. So it'll be four photos, and then he'll randomly select one of the four, and so that would be put inside of an envelope. I take a picture of that, post it on X a few days before, and so people can then post their submission. And then on Thursdays, I review Target live, and then people can come up and give their impressions, their experiences, and advice, stuff like that. So
Very
for this
cool.
week is actually pretty cool. We have some people have gone maybe 20 or 30 times, which is really cool to see the different types of submissions and experiences. And not only that, just the progression sometimes that they feel that they have. So this next one, we have actually had somebody come forward from the community and donate. I think it's right now it's about $500 worth of crypto. It's a certain crypto that they're going to donate, but I'm sure you'll be able to transfer it and cash out in some form or fashion. But that's kind of what the opportunity is for the next one. We had a cash prize before of a couple $100, so this time it's going to be increased quite a bit. So a little bit more of a motivation. And I wonder, have you found that when there's like money involved, the people like maybe get a little tighter, don't do as well?
Oh, it's funny. I think when it's operational work, I think people do better. I think they actually do better because it means something. But that's different, I think, than a contest. So I don't think you can compare the two. But I haven't done any of the contest type viewing, so I don't know. Maybe people would be nervous or feel that might. I could imagine that being nervous about putting something on display could make you uh, more reluctant to to write down or to say what you're actually getting. Only the things that maybe you're 100% sure about. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and this is more of like, I guess, a public way of doing it, when usually remote viewing is a lot more personal, private, one-on-one, where you're not posting it in front of social media to kind of,
Right.
so I think some people are apprehensive that want to participate, and even if they don't, they're able to like send it or just do it on your own. You don't need to like post it. You could just kind of, it's just like a very simple way to test it out, so that if you're interested in it, you haven't done it before. So it's the best. My favorite is that people who have never tried it and come on and then actually do fairly well, and then they get interested and learn more about remote viewing. So that's kind of the goal. Is just like, this is like an entry point for people, I think.
I think that's wonderful. I think that's super fun. I love it.
And how will the judging happen on this space for this remote viewing contest?
I think we're still trying to figure it out, but we're up for having some guest judges come in and determine it. So I know Sal, he wants to be a judge. He asked if I wanted to, which I don't mind, but I think maybe having an odd number of judges. We had a couple people that couldn't be able, scheduling issues. So I think we're still trying to determine what the judging is going to be. And I don't mind even using like AI too to come in and help judge as well.
Well, I think it's really interesting, and like you said, the fact that you do it weekly, it just became part of the community, and there's always a great space happening before you do the target reveal. We're talking about whatever news is going on, whatever's happening, all sorts of different things. I know I've shared very personal experiences in those spaces, and then I always run away once the target reveal and everyone starts talking about the submissions. So, I always find them fascinating, and I really appreciate, what you're doing in the field here, and of course, being part of UFO Twitter Week. So fun, so much cool stuff going on. I see Just has her hand up.
Yes, I have a lot of questions, but my first one is, I know that Farsight did a lot of UFO targets. Can you tell us what you learned via those targets about grays and different things
Ooh, that's a
regarding
great
NHI?
question. I was going to ask that question, so thank you for asking that. That was awesome.
Yeah, yeah. We certainly did our fair share of looking at all kinds of ET related stuff at Farsight. But since then, I have looked at 1,000 times more ET stuff. I don't know exactly how many more times, but I have done so many sessions on all different kinds of aspects of the UFO phenomenon, and um, I'm going to more base my answer on what I've discovered through my own practice of remote viewing than what I learned at Farsight, because I think that that I've come to a feeling of comfort with how I task things, and how people that I trust, how they task things to give to me, so that I feel comfortable with the results. And and that, I'm not saying anything bad about Farsight here at all. They have their own way of doing things, and that's super cool. And I know they're super into UFO stuff, even up to today. Always have been. But things that I have found really interesting about NHI or aliens, ETs, whatever word you want to use. Um, like the gray aliens, they are so fascinating to me, because I know that there are a lot of theories that perhaps they are clones, or they're created beings, or all these kinds of things, right? And so I've I've had an obsession with them, mainly because I had that contactee experience that lasted so long. And I do believe that they are a created species. They do seem to be developed. They are not born. They are developed. They do grow. So they're not like built, um, you know, formed in some way and come out a certain size. Um, they start really small. They're grown. They're grown, but um, they are biological, but they aren't They don't come. They don't have parents. They're not born the same way that we are, and they seem to learn things just through. It's not even quite telepathy. I don't even know what you call it. It's almost like osmosis. It's like they're they come into their world, whatever, already knowing. It's like even when they're small, they have the same skill set, mindset, everything that they do as they grow and get larger. That's one thing that I found just.
Would you say bio AI?
They're definitely biological. At least, I mean, I'm not going to say definitely, but in my opinion, just from all the sessions that I've done and that I've given to others to do, they are biological. I do not think that they are AI particularly, but maybe that's what that is. Maybe that's what that they do have consciousness of some sort, that's different than ours. They are conscious beings. They are individuals. And this is one thing that I found very interesting too, because I know that in a lot of encounters, people feel, and they do act this way. They act in unison. They seem to be of one mind, but they do have an individual spark. You can look at each one individually in any particular encounter, like even a lot of the famous encounters that have multiple grays in them. You can look at each one individually and they each feel different. There's something that's special and unique to each one. And unlike any other, and you get that sense, it even comes out in the session that this is a unique person. So, I call them people because they're people wherever they come from, they're people too. So to me, they are individuals, but that individuality is not nearly as pronounced as ours is. Like for us, it's very pronounced. We are crazy individuals compared to these beings, but they do have a spark of originality, each of them individually, and they are workers. They remind me a lot of my bees. Now I'm a beekeeper. And I've got hives in my backyard, and each hive has its own queen. It's a feminine monarchy, a queen. And there's like one of my hives probably has 100,000 worker bees in it. All of those worker bees are female. And then there's a very small number of males that are drones. And all those female bees, they remind me of the gray aliens so much. It's like that's very similarity. They all look the same. They all provide all the same functions. They all go through the same kind of life cycle. They all do the same jobs the first 2 weeks of their life, and the next 2 weeks of their life, they all do the same jobs. They're all doing the same things, but they're each individuals, and they feel that way. If you remote view my beehives, you'll get a sense that each bee is its own person in a way. And that's how these gray aliens feel to me. It feels like that hive kind of mentality, but not like the Borg, where the Borg become assimilated and they no longer have any sense of agency. They're still individuals, but they're doing something for a collective. And that's how the gray aliens come across to me in remote viewing anyway. That's what I get.
Before we go to OSAP, Jason, I'd also like to ask, did you ever target like where they came from? Or are they future humans? Are they from our past? Did you ever target that?
Yes, I have targeted it many times. Now, I felt, okay, and this is a complicated question for me, and I'll explain why. The gray being that visited me, and in the thoughtball messages, it seemed to indicate that that either they were humans from the future, or we were on a path to become like them, and we should not be on that kind of a path. And I couldn't tell from the thought balls which was which, whether they actually are us in the future, or whether we're just on that same kind of, whether they had a similar trajectory to us, and that's what we may turn into, something similar to that. I don't know. So that, you know, when you have that kind of experience and you're given that kind of a message, it can cloud how you perceive things and how you interpret things. So I do not think that they are us in the future. I think that they actually come from another part of our galaxy. I do think they come from another planet, or at least they originally did. They may no longer live there, but I think that they did come from some other place. But I think that most of the ones that or maybe all of the ones that visit us today, I don't think that they have ever set foot on their home planet. I think that they live in ships, or maybe in bases. I don't know. And they've lived their entire lives in space, or in our space, in our planet. I don't think that I think that they're very far removed from where they originally came from.
Oh, Birdie, I love that so much. We're going to have to talk about this offline another time. All right. Allsap Rocky.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come up and ask questions. Appreciate you doing this, Birdie. So I've always been really interested in some of like the weirder remote viewing sessions, like what Pat Price did, and then they eventually had like Mel Riley and some of these other guys view underground bases. And I think I heard that you had viewed those at one point, and I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about that and maybe what you perceive the goal is of having bases here.
So you mean alien bases or secret government underground bases? Which one?
I guess either. Do you have experience with both of those?
Yeah. I've remote viewed both multiple times. Alien bases. There are alien bases that are there's underwater bases. There are underground bases. I don't think there are as many as some suggest, and I don't think they're necessarily in the same locations that some people like. I don't like a lot of people feel that there are bases in Mount Shasta, for example. And I've looked at Mount Shasta a bunch of times because I want to find out, are there actually Lemurians there? What's going on over there? I don't never gotten anything like that. I do think that that's an area where it's a hotspot area where people do see things, but I don't think there's an underground base there. But there are other locations along in the planet, in the ones that I have looked at are in places that are very far from most human activity. They're in more remote locations. They're not around a lot of people. So I did remote view something in up toward the North Pole, another one toward the South Pole. There is one that I remote viewed that is in a desert area in Africa. And so it's places like that, way outside the beaten path. There may be some people that live in that area, but it's usually very small communities, more rural, simple life. Not a lot of human technology around. And I think that these bases, I mean, they all seem to be a little different from each other. They're not the same. They all have different features, different things that seem to be going on. I've seen things like, ships under construction. Also, lots of beings. In one particular base, there were humans, like actual humans, not created humans, but like our people that were working in conjunction with them. And that I found extraordinarily interesting. It seemed to me to be some kind of military connection, United States military connection, although there were people apparently from other countries as well. I don't have a lot of data on that. It's something I want to go back to. But that to me is just really interesting. I do think that there are underground bases, underwater bases for sure. There seems to be something in the Mariana Trench. That could be the largest base on the planet, actually. Very, very big base, huge. and there are a lot of ships stored. Like it's a storage facility, almost like a self-storage. It kind of has that feeling like a self-storage, like there's individual um, um, I don't know, pods. That's not quite the right word, but like pods of some sort where individuals go and they go and they check on their stuff. It's like there seems to be some sense of individual ownership at that location, which I always found fascinating. And as for like a secret U.S. government type bases, yeah, there's definitely a lot of that around. But I think everybody knows that too. The government hasn't kept that exactly secret. So there's a lot of military type activity. A lot of it's just boring, honestly. Some of it, you look at it and you think, well, this is a storage facility, or they've got a lot of equipment that they're working on down here, but it doesn't seem to be. Maybe it's weapons, weapons development, or it's not that interesting. I mean, maybe it would probably be interesting to the right person, but not as interesting to me. But there are a number of underground bases. Now, I have remote viewed an underground facility that had remote viewers in it. Now, that was the most interesting government, and I use that term loosely because I'm not sure that it was actually government. This could be some kind of contractor of some sort, and I think that that's more likely than actual government owned. I think this is more
Okay.
contractor. But yeah, and they were using technology in ways to enhance their remote viewing, and something involving brainwaves that would monitor brainwaves, and other kinds of technology as well, something involving sound. And I don't think that's binaural type music. I think this was some other kind of sound that was imperceptible, to your conscious mind, but would enhance remote viewing in some way. And that I found very interesting. I'm still trying to figure that out because I would like to try that if possible. And I have done a lot of brainwave research, just kind of honestly because I saw that these other remote viewers were using it, and I thought, well, I want to figure it out. So I started getting involved in doing brainwave, my own, just this is like an N=1 experiment where I've just been working on myself for, I don't know, I've been doing this for 9 years, the brainwave stuff.
You
But
might be able, if you have like speakers or headphones that can go low enough, which would be difficult, but you may be able to find something. It could just be like an extremely low frequency, like oscillator,
yeah,
like a tone generator.
that's what I think it is, likely something like that. And there seems to be, because everyone's heard about what do they call it? The brown tone, that if you hear that, then you have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
There's
careful if you try that method.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that, yeah, and then sound can be used as a weapon as well. So you do have to be careful in investigating any of this stuff. So yeah,
Have you
I
found
haven't.
any other correlations between something like sidereal time or something where, multiple people tried the remote viewing under a circumstance and they were more successful or less?
Actually, we tried that at Farsight a long time ago, and the results were kind of all over the map. We didn't see a correlation, but I honestly don't think, because I was early on at Farsight, and I don't think anyone was good enough to really make that kind of determination. And I haven't done anything with that since, but I know that that's one thing that people talk about, but I couldn't tell you either way, to be honest. I just always
Can you hear me, Birdie?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to drill down. So let me ask you a question. So when you were viewing these like deep underground hybrid military type bases, was that before all the sort of crazy shit happened to you? Because you know what I mean? Like if you're remote viewing bases like that have, let's say, remote viewing monitors, do you think it's that kind of remote viewing that maybe got you on the map when you had to quit for a while there?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, we did look at that at TDS. We sure did, and we didn't do a lot of it. We did a little bit of it, and we did think that we did get the sense after that, for a while, we did get the sense that we were being remote viewed in return for a while. It was like this weird feeling that a number of us had that lasted a few weeks, and it was very uncomfortable, a little unnerving. You felt like someone was watching you, and
Psychic spies.
psychic
Like the
spies.
observer effect. I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like if you walk down the street and you're just minding your own business and you feel like someone's looking at you, right? You turn around and they're looking at you. I mean, we experience this all the time anyway. It's like I said before, it's really a question of these things happen all the time anyway. It's just there. It's just all ever present, and it's a question of opening that aperture and having this awareness. I think the more that you involve yourself in remote viewing and the practice of it and taking it seriously and really trying to figure out from session to session what you're doing, what you're thinking when you're doing a session. That's what makes you better. It's not just doing the rote practice of it. That's like practicing the same scales on the clarinet and playing the scale the wrong way, practicing it the wrong way every time. You're never going to get better. But if you practice every time and you really think about it afterward, this is something I'm trying to instill into people I'm working with today, is to really deconstruct what you did, think about it, try to figure out what your mind was trying to tell you. And then the next session's always better. And I know that experienced remote viewers, they understand this because this is what they do. This is what people do. They get to be really good at it. They understand, they build this language between their subconscious, whatever that is. I mean, that word, it's, all of this language that we're using to describe all of these kinds of things involving consciousness, none of it's truly been codified. It's like, we throw all these words around, interdimensional, all this stuff. What does it really mean? Nobody can really pinpoint any of this. We're still feeling our way in the dark. We're doing the best we can, right? Using the language as we can. But anyway, but to get back to your question, John. So yeah, but I don't know that was why the harassment started. I don't know.
I was
I
just
think it
checking the
was,
timing on that
yeah,
because
yeah,
when you
yeah, we
get on
did.
the radar, I mean, it even
Right,
happens in
right.
UFO Twitter. Once you get on the radar in a big way around here, sometimes the attack dogs come a running and the
That's
campaign
right.
against you starts and
Yeah.
you get watched and you get checked out and that happens all the time. So when you were telling that part of the story earlier, and then as soon as Rocky asked his question, that was the first thing that popped into my mind was, because if you can see them, they can see you, and they're like, oh, who's this person peeping on our secret facility? We better find out. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, be
Yeah.
careful what you remote viewers. Like, that's why Strader does not go looking for underground bases. I never put my brain on that. I'm not a remote viewer for those of you in the anonymous section. I'm not looking at your secret base or any other such thing. Jay Just, I see your hand there. Good question, Rocky.
Okay, so I was wondering, did you ever get their intent with the human race, the Greys, or any other NHI? And have you picked up any other NHI in your sessions that work with the Greys?
Yes. Yes. On a number of occasions, there have been the mantid type beings that have been present in the same sessions. And on a small number of sessions, there have been what I'll call reptilian type beings, taller beings that seem to have a lizard type skin or coat, like a coating. It really feels like more like a coating to the skin, a layer that's applied. Um, that that that's come up multiple times. It's weird, it's like scaly, but it's applied. It's not how they are if you were to look at them naked, so to speak. Now I don't know, I've also looked at reptilians separately, and they do feel different than the reptilians that I see with the Greys. So I think it might be two different kinds of things. But those are the two that I have seen with Greys. I've also seen taller Greys with the shorter Greys. And on one occasion, And this was just one session. So, you know, this is a coin toss here, really what this means. And it could have been metaphorical data, because this was a while back, where I did have a session with a number of grays. And then there was a taller, like what people would call a tall white, those aliens, as Charles Hall described, something like that, more human looking with wispy hair. And they were not interacting with them, but they were observing from a bit of a distance. They seemed to be interested in what was happening. It was like a small group of them, with one in particular that was focused on what was going on. Yeah, you know, it's just weird stuff. I think
Of
the
course.
thing is, you know, people over our entire human history, so many people, I don't even know what the numbers are, because much of our, you know, we only have truly recorded history in the last 100 years. Before that, history was only recorded if you had the money to be able to record it, right? The means to do it, the understanding to do it, and could do it. So a lot, I believe it's likely that a lot of encounters are just simply lost to time. But there's still encounters that have been described. Jacques Vallée published this wonderful book called Wonders in the Sky, which goes over like every sighting that he was able to identify, and with sources on every single case. Going way back to, you know, antiquity. It's a great bathroom book, because you can just flip open any page and read an account from China in 1748, or Egypt in 528 BC, or whatever. It's a great book. But we've
That would be
had
a
these.
fun game to play on Spaces. Pull out that book, open up just randomly, read the first one, and then talk about it, break it down, and then like
Yeah,
just randomly pull another one out of history. Because you're right, that book is amazing. Now we're getting a
it
bunch of hands
is.
here.
Well, the second part
Oh,
of
go
my
ahead, Joe.
question was, did you ever remote view the intent of the beings themselves
Yeah,
on like what their intent is, why they're here, what their purpose is?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. The I believe that we are a genetic experiment, or at least we've been experimented upon. I think that the Greys have been involved in that. Their intent seems to be, you know, and this is I have to qualify this, because we are human beings, and we cannot help but take an anthropocentric view of anything we look at. And when we look at anything NHI, we are looking at it through a human lens. So you know, if I'm looking at the intent of the gray ETs, for example, I am going to only be able to understand that from my own human perspective. And I think that is problematic, because, you know, and the thought balls are what taught me this, because there's clearly an intent there that I can't understand. It's beyond my comprehension. And I don't think that any time or effort will ever allow me to truly understand that intent, or the mind fully of one of these beings. It's just simply so alien. But the best that I can determine, they feel how they feel about us. They feel like they are caretakers in some way. So it doesn't seem like it, you know, maybe it's akin to, I've got a dog. He's 2 years old. He's a nut. Um, and I love him. And it feels almost like the feelings that I have for my dog. My dog being, you know, um, not as smart as a human, but still pretty smart. I love him. I take care of him. I'm concerned about him. Those kinds of feelings come across when I look at the Greys, and I'm looking at intent, or I'm looking at interactions, and looking specifically at emotional content, which I like to do that. I ask a lot of questions when I'm doing a session, and I try to really get inside people's minds, you know, whether they're aliens or humans or dogs or whatever. But I do get this sense that there's this feeling that they are trying to shepherd us along, or guide us in some way. Now, that doesn't mean what they're doing is healthy for us or good for us, or that we want it or appreciate it. You know, both things can be true. It can be bad for us and a really negative thing for humanity, and yet they feel that what they're doing is important in helping us. And I don't know if it's truly helpful or not what they're doing, because it's complicated. Abductions are done without any conscious consent. Maybe we gave consent on some level and that we can't understand or appreciate. Maybe it's implied in being human that this is part of who we are, is that we have this life with these other beings. It may be a symbiotic relationship. And I do get the sense that there's some kind of symbiosis. That's why I brought that up. I get this feeling, but it's complicated. It's just like, it's not, we can't, I don't know how easy it's ever going to be for us to understand, even if big disclosure happens, even if President whoever, you know, after the election gets up there and says, we are not alone. Here's what we found. Here's the archive. Even if they handed it all over to us, I still don't believe that we would really understand. Every time you remote view any of these beings, it is intractable. It's impenetrable in some way. You can describe it in great detail and still come away completely befuddled. I love it. It's a mystery, and I welcome the mystery. I want to know as much as I can, so I keep looking at it. I keep working at it. I want to figure it out. And I know that I never will. It's my Augean stables, right? You know, I'm always going to be cleaning those stables. I'll never be done with the job. I think that's the nature of our relationship with all of these beings. Now, there may be some beings that are more like us than others, and those are probably more easy to figure out, but still, they're still not humans, and they're still going to have a different sense of being, a different way of organizing their own minds, different philosophy, different sense of spirituality, different even sense of consciousness, even different consciousness just entirely. That's one thing that always I always think about this after a session that's ET related, and I use ET as a blanket term here, but I every time I do one of those sessions, I always walk away with it thinking, how much do I have in common with this other person that comes from someplace I don't understand? How much do I have in common? I'm always trying to figure out what do we have in common? Do they love? Do they have friends? These are questions that I have a hard time understanding, because the relationships between them seem to be so different than the relationships that we've cultivated as human species. You know, if they don't have a mother and a father, if they don't have siblings per se, that creates a whole different kind of being. If you don't come from the same kind of foundation, it's all so different. I don't even think I answered your question, but there you go.
No, that was beautiful. And hold
Thank
on,
you.
now you've lit up the room. We've got a bunch of people up here. They've all got their hands up, and I think I've written down the correct order here. And I'm just gonna say, I can't let you go today. And I see you, Star Captain. Slow down, bro. There's a lot of people ahead of you. I know you're excited. She's lighting up the room. It's awesome. But before we're gonna go to their questions, but I'm gonna say mine first. You don't have to answer it, because I don't want anyone else to beat me to it. Because, uh, you know, when I hear how good your remote viewing skills are, the first thing that pops into this, you know, Apollo moon obsessed, you know, child of Apollo is remote viewing the moon. So you don't have to answer that right now, but I just want to get it in there just in case someone else was gonna unload it, because that I can't wait to hear about that. But let's get to some of these people. So I think the first one we have is Christoforos.
Hey, hello, thank you. Thanks. This has been great. You mentioned earlier, before you left the remote viewing world for a while, that you had noticed some strange things about remote viewing, and it kind of felt like there was something there. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what you meant by that.
Yeah, they're Okay, this gets really complicated. I felt that we started doing experiments where we were looking at different sessions that had already been completed. John Vivanco and I were doing this, and then we would look at sessions that others had done or that we had done, and we decided to start doing some kind of double tasking on them. So say somebody had remote viewed the Taj Mahal, and we got their session there, and they described whatever they described. It was a session on the Taj Mahal. So we decided we were going to retroactively retask that same session, but task it with something different. So say Disneyland. So then that session was both tasked with Taj Mahal and Disneyland, and we would do it without looking at the data. We'd pull one at random without looking at what the original tasking was, and we'd retask it. And then when we would look at what the original tasking was and the new tasking, we realized that the data answered both targets. It related to both targets. Like the viewer would choose the language and the imagery that was in common with both. And there would be tendrils off in directions for each of the individual targets, but there was like a body of evidence. It was really weird. And so we decided that was like a real phenomenon because we did it so many times. It was a real phenomenon. And then I started wondering, are other people doing this? And we started looking at that. Are other people doing this? And we found that there was a project. Somebody was doing this. We strongly believed that there was a project where somebody was taking, kind of scraping off the internet, any session anyone had uploaded. And a lot of people were uploading sessions in those days. You know, there was a lot of people that were sharing their work. And we discovered, and this was through remote viewing, you know, that there was a project, and it seemed to have some connection to the military, where they were taking sessions and they were doing some kind of retroactive tasking on them. They were collecting the data and doing some kind of retroactive tasking, and I didn't like it, so I stopped putting sessions online. And I'm not going to ever do a public project ever again. I'll never do it again, because I do believe that at least at that time, and I don't know if it's happening today, at that time I felt that there was some kind of effort to either manipulate people's data or to use people's data. And I didn't like it. And I actually wrote an essay about it where I talked about a distributed intelligence network that was doing this. And I don't even know if I don't think it's anywhere on the internet anymore. I think I have I'll probably throw that up on my website sometime soon, because it was just fascinating to me thinking about it. And I don't know what to think about those sessions today. It was a long time ago, you know, 23 years ago, like 23 years ago. I was out of the field for 22 years. Out of the public field. I still did it privately. But so it was like 23 years ago. It was right before I left. And it was one of the reasons I left. The harassment was the number one reason. I would have left without the distributed intelligence network stuff. But it did contribute to my wanting to leave, because I felt that viewers were being compromised. Now, I really should look at that again and see what I think about it, because it's an interesting idea. Somebody could absolutely do that, could co-opt people's sessions and use them for their own purposes. I believe that happened then, because we were able to do it, so anyone could do it, right? So it's an interesting thing. If you're a remote viewer, you know, try it out. Take one of your old sessions, pull one of your old sessions out at random. Don't, you know, but come up with a tasking for it. A new tasking for it, pull one of your sessions out at random and see how the data matches both of them, both targets. It's an interesting practice. We did it so many times that I don't know, it just became funny to us. John Vivanco and I, we couldn't stop laughing about it, because it was just like ridiculous. No matter what, whose it was, and we pulled it out and retasked it without looking at it ahead of time, you know, just like at random. Flipped over, give it a new tasking, then flip it over and look at the chart, see what the old tasking was, blah, blah. It was so funny how it worked. And we even hypothesized there could be a universal session. We could pull out a session at random, make it the universal session, and see if we could task it with like everything. But we never actually accomplished that. But it was an interesting idea, but I don't know that you can. I don't know. It's, people call it hijacking sessions, and I have mixed feelings about it today. That was a long time ago. I would probably go about it really differently today, and I might try it again with some of my old stuff. I wouldn't do it with anybody else's today, but I think I probably will try that at some point in the future, just to see what I think about it. And I probably will look to see if there are any more similar projects going on where somebody is collecting data. But that was the weirdness I was referring to, was that I felt that was going on. And was it just me being paranoid? Perhaps I was getting very paranoid back then. I admit it.
Well, with good reason. So, great
Yeah.
question, Chris. We're going to cruise on to the next person. Now, Ursula is my co-host. She has not asked a question. So, Ursula. You got the question, Ursula?
Oh, hi. I'd like to, I don't know if this was already asked before. I was wondering if you ever remote viewed with Native Americans, and also when do you think first contact was with any NHI, like at what point in our past, and also how, was there really advanced civilizations here long before us? And at what date do you think that they came here? How old is our civilization? Is it like more than 200,000 years old? So that was my question. Those are my questions. I have more, but I'll let people go. Thank
Oh,
you.
you're welcome. Okay, so your first question was about Native Americans, and I've trained Native Americans, and I think that the people who are Native American, who are very much in touch with their culture, who grew up in a strong Native American culture, I think that most of the ones that I have trained, and I've trained a number, make excellent remote viewers. They already have a different sense of time and place than anyone who grows up in Catholic family or a Baptist family or whatever. I think Native American spirituality is more open to having unusual experiences, more open to receiving information and understanding. This is the most important part, I think. And this is, I think, wherein lies the difference. Understanding that messages come, information comes in forms of storytelling. I always say that remote viewing is storytelling. I believe that with all my heart, that we're telling stories about a real experience that we're having when we remote view. We're experiencing the target. And I don't use the word target anymore. I call it an experience, in fact, because I want the people that I work with, the people that I teach, to feel that they're having a really interesting adventure. It's an experience. It's not something to hit or miss. It's something to relish and to dive into and to use everything that you've got to figure it out. And I think that people who come from Native American culture, that's intrinsic to the culture. Storytelling is intrinsic to the culture, so they have an easier time with understanding how to decode metaphors and so-called storylines, because to them that is natural way of being. So yeah, that answers that question. And then how long have the aliens been here? Well, many different species have visited us, I believe, and I think that they have been here way longer than we have been here as Homo sapiens. They've been here certainly before we became humans. I believe that there have been aliens here at the time of the dinosaurs. I actually did a session once on dinosaurs, and I got a freaking spaceship in it. And I knew that it was
Oh my
real.
God, we have to talk about this later. This is a big one for me. This is a big one because you don't even know that story. So hold on. Wow. Okay, great question.
Yeah. So I think they've been here way longer than we've been here. At least some have been. I do think that contact has been increasing the more technologically advanced that we get. I do think that there has been more interest in us, particularly as a species. I think there's always been an interest in our planet. It may be that our planet is unusual in some ways. It may be that the number of planets that truly can sustain life are not hugely numerous. I just don't know. But I think that there has been an interest in our planet for reasons that I'm not quite sure of. It's hard to decode that. But I think they've been here pretty much forever, at least as long as there has been life on the planet. And your other question was about ancient, like, do we have ancient civilizations that were advanced? I think I do believe that that's true. I do think that that's true from remote viewing, from looking at a number of ancient sites where things seem to be confusing as to how these sites were built. I think that there seemed to be, at least in some cases, a partnership between humans and some other beings, or beings perhaps that came and instructed humans. I think that has happened. Do I think that we were once an advanced species that destroyed ourselves and then we had to rebuild ourselves? I am not sure about that. I haven't ever seen that per se. Like did we develop a nuclear bomb and then set it off and then have to restart? I don't think that we have ever. I think that our height of technology today is the highest level of technology that humanity has achieved. But I do think in the past that we have interacted with other species who have had advanced technology, and that advanced technology was used in those civilizations, at least for a time. And did I get all your questions?
Yes, that was
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you,
Okay.
Ursula. All right,
Yeah,
so
thanks, Ursula.
the list I've got here, I'm going to name the next three. So we have Fringe, we're going to get OSAP one more time, and then we're going to go to Eric.
Thank you so much, John, Ursula, J Just, and Birdie. You are amazing. Thank you for being here today. I do have two questions, John. I'm totally fine if you want me to just go
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to have to pop off here in just a few minutes. First, have you viewed the future like Lynn Buchanan did, and what are we looking at there? And second, have you seen the entities you discussed, the grays, the mantids, etc., involved in the afterlife? And again, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay. Have I viewed the future? Yes, a zillion times. Zillion is a slight exaggeration, but only slight. I have definitely viewed the future, all kinds of things in the future, near-term future, far-term future. I believe that we are at a critical point in humanity right now. It's partially nuclear proliferation. It's partially artificial intelligence. It's other technologies that are in development that we haven't learned about as civilians. These technologies are creating a fork in the road for us, and we have to decide what kind of people that we want to be. And when I look at the future, I can see that fork in the road, and I can see where in some possible future, and it is more probable than not, where we destroy ourselves or destroy bulk of humanity through bad decisions, through warring with each other, through greed over resources. This is more probable than the other fork in the road, where we learn to harness these things in a healthy way and learn how to live with each other and feed and clothe each other. We are at this critical junction right now, and the weight of our past is more pointing to that horrific future than it is to a beautiful future. But I believe that we are not past the point of return. I can see that point of return. It's not that far in the future, but we have a chance right now to change who we are, how we deal with each other, how we interact with each other, how we love each other between now and then, to be able to take that detour in one direction that'll make us a more interesting, beautiful, more intelligent, probably spacefaring species. I think that we have the opportunity to get there, but we are at a critical junction right now. And when I remote view the future, I see both of these things, and I keep getting in my sessions, it's a choice. We have a choice. It's up to us. This is like, I see this over and over again. The future is still probabilistic, I believe. I mean, there are different schools of thought on time and the future, but I believe that the weight of the past means that some events in the future are fixed to a degree, and that some are still probabilistic because the future is still forming around them. And so I think that we need to call in that more positive future and start behaving in a way that allows us to cross into that better future. But yeah, I've remote viewed the future. And what was your second question? It
Thanks,
fell out of my head.
thank you so much. Actually, I had a piggyback on that first one. Do you see the NHI actually influencing us and our choices for the future?
I think they've been influencing us, or at least attempting to. I think that that's why a lot of people get these messages about nuclear devastation. You look at the school children, the aerial school children, who had the mass sighting where they all saw craft land and beings give them telepathic messages of destruction and warnings about technology and the future and all of these things. I think that, that is not an uncommon experience. Many people who have had encounters or even abduction experiences have reported receiving similar messages. I think that they're trying to influence us through children, through our subconscious, through our non-waking hours, through these moments when they give us this, it's like a subliminal suggestion. And I don't know if that's enough to turn us around, but they seem to be invested in us not destroying at least the planet. Maybe they don't care so much about destroying ourselves, but I don't think they want the planet destroyed. But yeah, I do think that they're trying to influence. And I think that it could be possible that they would, they've turned on and off nuclear silos. They seem to be extraordinarily interested in our nuclear capabilities. I sound like Lou Elizondo here. But I don't think that that is because they're trying to figure out how they can best us. They clearly can best us already. I think what they're doing is trying to send a message. So that's what I think.
Thank you so much, Birdie. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Great question. Okay, Asap, you're the man.
All right, so I'm kind of bringing it back to like remote viewing of like ETs. I guess we're still on that, but so while remote viewing, like remote viewing people, for example, I've like gotten attachments to people that kind of lasted afterwards, and I've learned to make sure to end the session and that connection. But I'm curious if you've ever had anything like that, like entities trying to stay connected to you or anything like that. And I don't know, any protocols that you've found to be helpful with regards to that.
The psychic hitchhiker.
Yeah, so I have like a different perspective on the hitchhiker kind of effect. I think that just the practice of remote viewing, it opens that aperture, your awareness, so that you see things that are already there. And I think that all of these beings and stuff, they're already in our space. They're already around. If you pay attention to them, they're going to pay attention to you. And I think that, yeah, you can have an experience after remote viewing where you feel that someone is still has a connection with you, but you can also just say stop, and it will stop. I mean, I have never ever had a negative hitchhiker experience. I know that others have reported that. I am not saying that what they're reporting isn't true. I believe that it is true. I believe that they have had these experiences. But in my experience, what I do, because this has happened a few times where I felt that after a session that whatever the entity was that I was having a conversation with, say, in the session, or, you know, deep mind probing, as they'd say at Farsight or whatever, I would still feel that presence later. And if I didn't like it, I would just say, you know, that was really, I had an interesting time with you, and I would just like to be alone now. And it would just end. I haven't ever met an entity that was disrespectful in that way. And maybe I'm just lucky. But I just tend to view things very simply, with regard to this, and just to have, I think that opening a conversation, means that you can end a conversation. I think that we are just as powerful in a consciousness level as anything else out there. I don't believe we have learned how to harness our capabilities, what we have, who we are. But I think that we can learn how to harness those things. And I think that that's one thing that I've figured out how to do, is how to shut that off if I want to.
But you don't do any like any like ritual or like sort of any routines before or after to start or end a session for that purpose or anything?
No, I do not. I mean, I know that a lot of people do, and if someone is uncomfortable in training and worried about that, then I will suggest that they come up with a ritual that's personal to them, and, you know, whether it's surrounding themselves with white light, or you know, there's a number of different things that you can do. But I think that those things are fundamentally psychological tools, and I think that you can just simply understand that you are just as powerful as anything else and shut anything down. But it's totally okay to do it in the context of a ritual. It's the same thing, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
Great question. All right, let's go to Eric.
Hey, wow. Thank you guys for taking my question. Thank you, Birdie. This has been a great space. You just brought up so many like things. I had to write down like a list here. I mean, I mean, I'm not kidding. I mean, so I really appreciate your time, and I'll try to be as quick as I can. I've always been fascinated by remote viewing, and I've always wanted to ask someone who has extensive experience viewing the future. Just some basic things that I just don't understand, and I think it's may help me kind of sort some different facets of the phenomenon and how it operates. So my question really is, have you ever tried to remote view in the future any form of gambling? I mean, I live in Las Vegas, and gambling is a big thing. And I just wonder, you know, how real time could you be viewing something?
And are you available for hire?
No, not even. I mean, it's just a fascinating thing. I mean, anyway, so I'll let you answer. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's a good question. I think that that's possible. I think it's absolutely possible. Now, I haven't done this, but you know, you can, the more that you become involved in the practice of remote viewing, the more you understand just intuitively how people think. You know, it's not just like reading people's micro expressions, like reading people, you know, like a parlor trick, but it's more of a understanding what's going on in their heads, and that could possibly be very useful if
Yeah,
you're
more
playing.
intuitive kind of intuition about someone, you know, like I don't know, that
Yeah,
didn't make any sense what
yeah,
I just said, but you know what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you could probably intuit whether someone has a good hand if you're playing poker or something. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not a gambler, and I don't even know how to play poker.
Yeah. Well, how about let me
So,
put it in some different forms. So put the gambling aside, maybe like sports betting, stock market moves, and the one I've always been fascinated with, lottery numbers.
oh, well, you know, back at TDS, we had a lottery group, and we were doing this this method that I called the finger method for a while there. It's actually pretty successful. It was
Are,
amazing.
are there
We
people
would
that
like,
try to do this in the community of remote viewers? It's not a just kind of a crazy thought in my head. This is something
oh
that's common?
no, oh, this is something that's very common. Are you
Really?
kidding? People really
No.
are really into this. And so
I
like the finger method, so you give each of your digits a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, right? So from
Okay.
your
I'm with you.
pinky on your left hand to the pinky on your right hand. And so you'd place your fingers on the table in front of you, and you would just sit there quietly for a minute, and then the first finger that you feel something in, maybe it would twitch, or maybe you just know which finger it is, you write that number down. And so we were doing this to try to win the lottery, and we had like a little, we were doing like the quick, like the little the small one, like the daily
Yeah.
numbers,
Just pick a few
not.
numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, the pick a few. And so, and we were winning small amounts, and that was, we donated that to the Humane Society every time.
When you say,
And
what was the, I mean, like, is it, when you say small amounts, was it like you're getting better than kind of 50-50, or like, what are we looking at it in terms of like
All right,
win
last
loss
question,
rates?
Eric. I'm
Yeah,
moving
sorry.
on.
Apologize. I'll stop.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was definitely way above chance, because every time we had, or almost every time, not every time, but I'd say, 80% of the time we'd win something, even if it was simply the price of the ticket back, or maybe we'd earn $5, or
Yeah, you could
$10,
check it
or
as a win in the statistical box. Yeah, thank you so
right.
much for your time. I appreciate it. I won't take
Yeah,
any
you're
more. Thank you.
Great question, dude. No, you can stay. I just got a lot of people to go to. So, all right, terrestrial.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, okay, awesome. Great space, John. I have a quick question. I know that John his head's in the same place as me. I'm going to leave you up to having the moon question answered. But there was a book that came out in 1986 called The Ringmakers of Saturn. And in that book, it was theorized that there was a 7,000-foot cigar-shaped craft in those rings of Saturn. So my question is, have you ever remote viewed those rings, heard of that book, and what'd you see?
And you can mention moon too.
Oh, I have not read that book. So, I can't answer that question. I'm really sorry. Do you have another question?
No, that's cool. Other than the moon stuff, just which I'm sure John will get to, but
No.
it's interesting.
No, I called it. I'm just waiting for someone else to do it. So now is the appropriate
Okay.
time to talk about the moon. I'm down with that.
Okay, perfect. My other question would be, if you have actually remote viewed the far side of the moon, what did you see?
Oh, there's definitely alien stuff on the other side of the moon. There's definitely a little base there. It's small. It's not huge, but there's structures there that are in use. It's not always inhabited, but it's like a kind of like a gas station kind of a thing. It's like it's a small facility that is used on occasion, and sometimes it is populated for a period of time. It seems to go in some kind of a cycle. I'm not sure what that cycle is, but this has been remote viewed multiple times, and not just by me and people I've worked with, but by other remote viewers out there, and they all kind of describe similar things, where there is definitely structures on the other side. And it seems to be, to me, I think that the purpose of it is it seems to be a way station. I don't Some kind of monitoring station, way station. It collects data. There seems to be technology on it the technology is always running. It's some kind of telemetry involved, sending a message somewhere. So there's some kind of messaging going on, telemetry, and it's in use, and it seems to be associated with the gray aliens
Do you
and
ever
not
sense
other species.
an AI presence on the moon?
That I think that there is likely AI at that facility. That
Okay,
seems like it's AI to
now
me.
you're getting
Yeah,
me excited now.
yeah. But AI, not like we understand AI. It's way more advanced
Oh
than
yes,
than
I have a name
anything.
for it. As some people who've watched my videos on through a mirror darkly, through a glass darkly, Sean Hazlett know exactly what I'm talking about. But that's another story for another day. Any other moon insights or space insights?
um, I believe the astronauts, Neil Armstrong and all of them. I believe that they said that they had an encounter or saw something.
Oh, now we're talking.
Yeah,
go into
I
that.
believe. Yeah, I believe that they had some kind of an encounter. They saw something. They were not allowed to speak about it, but I believe that they absolutely were greeted in some way on the moon. They saw a craft, and I think it freaked them out. But I think that they were also prepped for it. I think they expected perhaps to see something. I think that they knew it might be there.
Ooh, I love that answer. Okay, hold on to
I
your
have another
hats.
moon question as well.
Okay, well, hold on, brother. Right now, we've got a line, and I just put your name on the line as you came up. So put your hand up, and I will call on you. I'm down with anything moon, but I'm going to keep going on the hands here. Right now, we're going to go to Tammy.
Do you mean
I'm
Tamara?
sorry, it's Tamara. Tamara. I could only see Tam, and I just assumed, and then
Oh,
my
no,
phone is too small. Sorry.
no problem. There's a lot that I want to say, and probably not the space that I should say it on. I did post in the bubble something about our true history because I think somebody was asking about our true history. As far as viewing goes, this is not more of a question. Well, maybe it is.
Well, do you
I,
have a question? I
I
mean, that's what we're here
well,
for right now.
absolutely. So I can astral project. I can raise my frequency with intent, and I don't know if that's what I'm doing. Remote viewing. How do you specifically remote view? Because I can astral project. I can raise my frequency, and I think that's exactly what I'm doing as far as remote viewing because I get downloads, insights, that kind of thing. How do you necessarily remote view? Thank you.
No.
Yeah, well, I think all these things are on a continuum. I think, I have had experience with astral projection. I did the Monroe Institute stuff and had really interesting experience. A remote viewing is different than that. Remote viewing is a process um, where you focus your mind and you allow the information to come through, but you do a series of protocols, and the protocols are really just doing quick intuitive sketches and probing those sketches. And by probing, I mean just poking your pen into them and writing down all the sensory type impressions that you get, the data that comes in, and then you start drawing sketches. It's a particular, I mean, remote viewing is defined as following a series of protocols, being blind to the target, not knowing what it is. Somebody else knows what it is, but you do not. And then going through this kind of psychic exercise where you sketch and you draw and you write down your impressions, and then at the end, then the target is revealed to you and you find out what it is that you remote viewed. And so it's different. It was developed to be fairly scientific in that, because it's blind, you can't say that someone's making something up because they don't know what it is. They're not told ahead of time. And so the definition of remote viewing kind of requires those elements to it. I don't know if this makes sense. See, there's lots of videos out there that show remote viewing and show how to do it. I even have a little on my No Rivets YouTube. There's a little 3-hour workshop that shows some of the kind of beginner basic techniques. So if anyone wants to give that a whirl, you can try it out and see what it's like. And there's some
So,
exercises in the workshop.
just quick question: when
Yeah.
you remote view, are you given an image to look at, or do you necessarily jump to an image? Like if I want to remote view a underground military base, right? How do you do that? That's what I'm questioning. Or do when you remote view, are you given a target?
Yeah. So if I want you to remote view an underground military base, I would not tell you that's what you're going to remote view. I would write down what I wanted you to remote view, and I would write a totally random number next to that. And I'd put some intention into writing that out so that, I'm always very careful and that's called tasking. Very careful with the task. And I would give you just the random number. That's all you would have. You could be going any place, anytime, anywhere, in planet, off planet, backward in time, forward in time. You would have no clue. And you start with the random number. But by the end of your session, you would have pages of data, and it would describe that underground military base. That's how it works. I know it sounds
All right.
crazy, but it
That's
really
amazing.
works.
You
All
know
right,
what?
so
Thank
Tamara,
you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much.
thank you for your question. Yeah, I would say go onto her website, and she has all these training classes and stuff, and check it out because she's obviously a pro, and we can't train you here on the space. We got to get to the next hand. So take her class, check it out. There's every Thursday night here. There's a remote viewing space where people are learning about it and trying it out every week with Astral. So check him out, and if you're into it, then you can start showing up every Thursday and doing it with other people and learning the ropes. So pretty exciting. Okay, so we're going to move on to the Star Captain.
Ahoy. So, given that the variety of positive and negative experiences that we might consider that our space around our planet might be contested, and if those who are competing to influence or nudge us in a certain direction are not good stewards, as you were talking about stewardship before, by our collective judgment of them, we may need to reverse the role of this in the future and steward over them and steward over the cosmic seas accordingly. One of the influences that I see as a kind of potentially negative influence in a lot of different cultures, there is something akin to the Tower of Babel story, where humanity was climbing toward the stars, and we were then divided by some sort of outside force. This could be seen as a form of cosmic propaganda and a form of trying to psychologically manipulate us into being divided. And therefore, these things might have actually been foe in a certain sense, that we may have been fighting in that realm and then crashed here. And then we're subject to these types of influence that they have subjugated us to try to manipulate us and divide us against each other while they continue to pick off and attack or abduct and conduct these other types of things that they've been doing. So in rising into that realm, looking at that and saying that, you know, we have in the last 70 years created human rights that basically assert that we have the right to bodily sovereignty and bodily integrity, that their violation of that, if our law was to stretch into their domain, might then be used to hold them to justice, so to speak. So I don't think that they are completely benign. I think that there's a variety of both predatory and prey-like species, and I think it's important for us to be the apex predator in space rather than food. And
El
in that sense,
Capitan. El Capitan. Now, I know you can go on, and we can go on and on about all the theories, but can we roll it into a question for our guest?
well, what do you think about that?
There you go. Okay, there you go. I think, kind of like I said before, that it's very complicated, very difficult to understand exactly what the motivations and intentions are of all these different kinds of species that people have encountered over millennia. There may absolutely be some kind of galactic hierarchy with I don't know. There might be some kind of hierarchy. Our space may be contested. These things may absolutely be true that you're saying, but I do not believe that we are anywhere near the technological capability or the consciousness capability to be the apex anything. I think we are really, really babies in all of this realm, with all of these different beings around us and their capabilities with consciousness and their technology. I think we are simply nowhere near that. I think it's going to take us a very long time to reach a place where we could consider ourselves at the same level. That doesn't mean to say I don't think that we should consider not consider ourselves equals in terms of our agency, because I do believe that, but I don't think we're anywhere near having that kind of ability to kick others out of
Enforce
our
our will.
space.
Well,
Yeah, yeah.
in
I,
light of that, I'd say that we're like the young buck civilization rising up, and we got a point to prove in space. So in that, we might be more
Okay.
resilient because of that kind of capacity, and that
that's
might actually lead us to be more fierce than they are. They might be older, kind of laid back, and we're like, well, we got to rise up and move a point and push them around because maybe they've been, tinkering with us, but we got to assert ourselves and protect ourselves.
you are not alone in thinking that. I know a lot of people have that feeling and worry about like national security or global security. And I think that that's a fair position to take. I really do. I prefer myself to think about things in terms of consciousness and to think about our evolution as beings that have consciousness and how we can learn to appreciate each other better, our own human family, as Danny Sheehan would say, our own species, and appreciate ourselves better before, we've got to take care of ourselves before we can take care of the rest of the galaxy. And I don't think we're anywhere close to that. But anyway, I actually have to go now because I have to pick someone up from the airport because tomorrow I'm starting
I
a
was
5-day
just gonna
class.
cut in. I was just gonna
Yeah.
cut in and see how we were doing on time. I knew you had a limit. You have to. So can you do another 10? And then
I
we'll
can
be
do. How about
10
another?
minutes, and we'll try to
How
5.
about 5, guys? I got to be at the airport in 10 minutes.
Okay. All right.
I can
Okay.
be a couple minutes late to the airport.
Okay. How about this? Let's do a speed round. You do simple, fast questions because I still want to do one or two little plugs, which you can probably even take off. I just want to plug your website again and talk about the conference, and you can tell the lineup of the conference. And I wanted to hit a few other quick things that you've got coming on that isn't just questions from the field. So, Polar, quick question.
My questions is never quick, but thank you anyway. The thing I just wanted to say, Birdie, is that I love your and the way you approach remote viewing. It sounds like a very healthy way to be open-minded, experienced, and not too afraid of going into the subject and looking at things. Because if it's fear, too much fear, all the data gets convoluted. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate what you have conveyed here today. And I don't have a question for you now. I just wanted to say
Thank you,
that.
Polar.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very kindly.
Speed round. Dr. Marcella.
Hey guys, thanks for the space. I'll be really, really quick with this. Have you remote viewed, and I can take a yes or a no on this as well. Have you remote viewed Oumuamua, the meteor that went by?
Oh, yes.
Or anyone you
Great
know?
question.
Yes.
Was it unique?
Yes.
Was it something special?
It was unique.
Okay.
It's absolutely alien. No question. No question.
Okay.
Yeah,
Love you.
love
Dude,
you too.
great question. All right. Ganga, super fast.
She targets information of like sites and stuff like that. But my question is has she ever targeted like information that's mental information?
Yes, absolutely. Conceptual targets. And that's, yeah, you can look at the nature of time. You can look at the beginning of the universe. You can look at anything like that. It doesn't have to be objects. It can be ideas. You can look at the best way to do something. Absolutely.
Awesome. Super fast question. Jay Just.
So I was wondering if you ever targeted like afterlife and God and purpose of human life.
Whoa.
Yes, extensively, in fact, because I want to know. I grew up Catholic, and as they say, once a Catholic, always a Catholic. It's really hard to get rid of. and I have a very complex kind of sense of spirituality today, but I have looked at near-death experiences. What happens when you pass over? I believe that this is not the end. I don't believe that when we die, that this is the end of who we are. We go on after this. I 100% believe this, and not from my upbringing, but from remote viewing. But who we are on the other side is who we truly are, which is who we are here in our bodies, here on this planet, in this moment in time, is just such a small sliver of what we are. We are just these incredible, complex, beautiful. I can't even tell you how beautiful every single one of you is. It's just stunning. We are just sheer, incredible beings of, I don't want to say light. We're just this amazing consciousness that then makes a decision if what it wants to do after death. You have choices. You can decide to come back. You can decide to go someplace else. You can reincarnate. You can incarnate on another planet. You can live in this other area, this other kind of realm. And someone had asked me before, and I guess that's the one question I forgot, was, do you see ETs on the other side? And I have to be honest, I have not. So there you go.
Okay, really quick question, Ursula.
Hi, Birdie.
Hey.
This again, Earth again. This is from someone in the listeners, and I don't know if I hope I'm asking right, but they said, are Sandia Labs and Kirtland Air Force Base involved in my labs, possibly
Whoa.
with the NHI?
Oh, okay. Well, Sandia is right here. I can
Yeah, you
practically
might not
see
want to answer that.
it. Yeah, really.
That's probably not a question you want to answer in this live space when I live right next to the base myself. We'll talk about that offline.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, let's not review remote view secret government labs on my space or talk about that in any way, shape, or form. Eric, one last gambling question, super fast.
Super fast. Birdie, are you aware of anyone besides Hal Puthoff who's tried to use remote viewing against the financial markets or raise a fund or do any type of investment activity? Who's doing it or has done it successfully?
Yeah. Back at TDS, we worked for a hedge fund, so absolutely yes.
Which fund? Which fund?
Oh, she can't say that, Eric. Come on, Eric. Come on, Eric.
I had an
Well, what? It's a
NDA, so
hedge
I
fund. I
can't.
mean, it's probably on their prospectus that they're doing this. People love this kind of stuff in the financial investing world. It's not woo to them. They're just like, if you can make money by burning a cat, burn the cat. You know what I mean? Like they don't care. So you did it at.
I signed an NDA. I can't
Okay.
talk about who the client was,
Exactly.
but
Let's.
Yeah. Okay.
Come on.
yeah, but
No,
yeah,
Come on,
you
I
can
mean,
Eric.
like I said,
absolutely,
once the fund is closed, it's over.
and
So
it's like Daz Smith and his future forecasting group. They've done a lot of work in the crypto sphere. I mean, there's a lot of people.
What was the name? I'm sorry. Who?
Daz, D-A-Z, Daz Smith. Daz,
He's going to be
D-A-Z,
on
Smith.
Thursday night space,
Yeah.
Eric.
Oh, cool.
Why don't you show up to the UFO
Yeah,
Twitter
he's the
space
person.
Astral's putting on?
He is the
Thursday
person
night.
to ask these. He is the person to ask these questions because he's got a lot of experience in that, and he's been very successful in that. And
yeah, I'm sure there's funds out there that have white papers on it on their website. I just don't know who to look for.
All right, Eric, I said quick. I said quick. Okay, I know you're trying to make a buck.
Yeah,
I
gotta
keep
go.
rolling.
I gotta go now. I gotta go.
So I want you to just finish on one last thing. Just tell everyone, we haven't talked about it one time. Tell everyone about your conference that's coming up and what the lineup is, and just tell so they can know not only is she this amazing woman, amazing remote viewer, she does local events. She's putting on Albuquerque's 2-day conference in April. Tell us all about it, and then we're going to let you run.
Yeah, it's April 4th through the 6th. April 4th is a Friday. We have a meet and greet the speakers that night. The 5th and 6th is all day, Saturday and Sunday here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You can go to alienexplorationsconference.com or go to abqufos.com, and there's a link to it there. And we've got amazing speakers. We've got Danny Sheehan, Steve Bassett. I'll be speaking on remote viewing and UFOs. Ryan Wood, Tony Angiola, Ben Moss, Katie Page, Greg Bishop. We've got the Paranormal Rangers. We got Richard Doty. We've got Charles Hall, who hasn't spoken in public in many years. He'll be talking about his Tall Whites experience. And Norio Hayakawa is our Master of Ceremonies, and our keynote speaker is Linda Moulton Howe. So it's going to be a glorious, glorious conference, really amazing, jam-packed, really long days each day. intimate setting at the University of New Mexico. So come on down to
That's
Albuquerque and join us. And
And if you
John's going to
can't
be
make it,
doing spaces from the
that's right.
conference and
I'll
talking
be
with
there.
speakers. And
That's right.
and if
You
you
guys
can't,
can
and if you
listen
can't
in.
make it, we're going to do. You can watch it
Live stream.
virtually as well. There's a live stream of the conference, and so you don't have to come to Albuquerque. You can watch it in your underwear at home.
Awesome. Birdie, you're amazing. Thank you so much for spending your time with us here on UFO Twitter Week and the UFO Hotspot.
Thanks, John. I really loved it. Thanks, guys. I love you all. This was really wonderful. And let's do it again sometime.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
You guys did great. What great questions. Sorry, Tom, you disappeared. She ran out of time. I wish we could have gone longer. She is an amazing person, like we all found out tonight. She's multitasking in the UFO community so hard, and I'm just happy to have met her and able to help her in any way get the message out about what she's up to and the cool events she does here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the conference and these classes and remote viewing. And I would recommend Eric, if you're interested in making money remote viewing, take her class. It's on YouTube, and go to the Thursday show here on UFO Twitter Week. I think it's Astral's Thursday remote viewing space. There's a $500 crypto prize for whoever gets closest. And, Astral is the guy who put on a UFO Twitter Week. So I do want to give him a shout out here at the end. And I see UFO intros down there for anyone in the room who doesn't know Kimball. He made my killer logo here for the UFO Hotspot and does some promos for me sometimes. He's very skilled and does his own great show. And you can reach out to him if you're an experiencer and you're someone in the community who wants to get the message out, because he does great interviews on UFO intros. And I see Terrestrial here. We got Crystal. I mean, there's so many great people who've been in and out of this space, and we held our own, even though Maze has been going on for an hour. And there's other people that were having a lot of other spaces. So thank you guys for showing up and making her feel loved and appreciated. And of course, me too. So, and my lovely co-hosts, my wonderful Jay Just and Ursula, for helping manage, keep the room big and bringing people up. And, just being here and support and having great questions. To do a show like this, you need support from everybody. And I'm happy to end my UFO Twitter Week broadcasts on this note. This has been the UFO Hotspot. I'm your host, John Strader, and I am coming to you from the heart of the Southwest here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So thanks for tuning in, and enjoy UFO Twitter Week. There's spaces going on right now, and they're going on all week. So stick around, because we're talking UFOs, we're talking consciousness, we're talking remote viewing, we're talking moon bases, underground bases, abductions, aliens. This is the week for it. So spread the word, tell the normies, get in here, come into spaces, follow all your guests up here, follow Jiggy, follow UFO intros, just all of us, even the Wild Star Captain. Thank you guys all for
You want some outro music?
No, I don't.
It's big.
I am the outro music. Thank you, though. All right, so I'll see you all later. I'll see you around.